Welcome back to Mark Haney, igniting the entrepreneurial revolution with the HaneyBiz Project.
Welcome back to the HaneyBiz Project, brought to you courtesy of Hub International. I'm Mark Haney, and today I am joined by the speaker and the author of How to Love Your Cop, Vicki Newman. How you doing, Vicki?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you for joining me. You and I know each other some, and you are speaking at our event happening Saturday night, which if you're listening to this on Talk 650, that's tonight. Talk to us about what the message is that you're thinking about for Taste for a Cause for Allegiant Giving.
I'm looking at what it's like to interact with the toll of war as a civilian. Mm-hmm. I got to write a book, a story of a guy who you had on your show not too long ago.
Mr. Spractus.
Mr. Spractus. And the experience changed me and brought about, I was able to interact and interview probably about 20 service members, and just interacting with them, entering into this emotional piece. We asked them what their favorite stories were or the ones that kept them up at night. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about how sometimes it kept me up at night.
Yeah. Well, you bring, we were talking about empathy earlier on and with Carol, and you bring a very high, I'll call it EQ level to the show. And you have a series called How to Love Your Cop, and you are married to a law enforcement officer. Yes. Talk to us about the empathy needed in order to be married to a cop.
Oh, well, when we first got married, it was almost 30 years ago. He changed. I married him before he became a police officer, and then after he went through the academy and then on the streets, he changed. And I'm asking around, and I'm going, what am I going to do? This is not exactly the same guy that I married, mm-hmm. and what do I do? And so we've learned there was nothing there for us back then. And we were in the middle of L.A. Nobody was talking about their relationships. I didn't know anybody. And so we pretty much had to make it work. And so a lot of trial and error, a lot of tears.
And now your cause is about how to love your cop, because not only does that, have you felt the difficulties firsthand in being married to somebody in law enforcement, but your friends are, in many cases, facing something similar.
Yes. Once you get involved with law enforcement, a lot of times your schedules will dictate who you hang out with. And so we've got a lot of friends that are cops, and so over the years, that's who we spend our time with. And we have friends who are not in law enforcement as well. It kind of helps with the balance a little mm-hmm. bit. And I encourage people not to just hang out with cops, But yeah.
Well, cops see things as do folks that go off to battle in Afghanistan or Iraq or Vietnam. They experience things that I guess the average citizen here can't really understand, or maybe you can understand it somewhat as a spouse. How do you help them besides just to love them?
Well, the first thing is education. We need to understand who our spouses are. And that's the one thing is when my husband changed, it was because he was dealing with things that he'd seen only for the first time in his life. We were, college students when we got married. And then all of a sudden he's seeing things on the streets of LA that, things that canines do and things that people do to each other and horrible accidents. And he's having to come home and process that as a very compassionate man who wants to make a difference in the world. That tends to change you a little bit. You've got to, or he had to learn how to toughen up. Mm. And because of that, so did I.
And what did that look like? I'm envisioning the need to, a marriage is a partnership, and you can't be there just coddling your husband. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. Coddling, it only works to a certain extent. Sometimes you actually need tough love along the way.
Yeah, I had to find my voice. A lot of times, early in our marriage, I'd basically let him be and do and say whatever he wanted to, and then once in a while, then I'd blow up and come undone, and after a while, as we learned to communicate, as we learned to navigate the life that he was, the career, I had to find my voice, because there were times when I don't think he even realized that he was actually being hard on me and treating the kids certain ways. And so I had to find my own voice and exercise that tough love.
Now you've started an organization. You've written a book. You've also started an organization that helps others to sort of face those challenges. What does that look like?
Well, I wrote A Chip on My Shoulder, How to Love Your Cop with Attitude. I wrote that about 6 years ago, and then a couple years ago I wrote A Marriage in Progress, and that was the first one was for spouses. That was my story, our story, and then the second one was for officers, because it takes two. And I had heard a lot from the spouses saying, okay, well, if I do some of these things, yeah, it'll help. But man, this marriage takes two people. And I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Let's look at it from their point of view too. Yes,
exactly. And so I was able to say,
finally, come on now.
I was able to say some of those things that people wanted their spouses to hear. And I gave them words, So, but at the same time, there's that it's a partnership. It is, like you said, it's learning about each other and growing together and finding your voice and using it wisely, and not as a weapon. And so I wrote those two books, but also I do seminars and speak and different things, and just bringing ways to communicate, ways to resolve conflict, ways to empathize with each other in this, as we navigate this, 20, 30-year career.
Well, today's law enforcement officer faces things, obstacles, challenges that the police officer of 30 years ago didn't face. We know that there are a group of our society, the crazies, I guess I will call them, that don't respect police officers and the way they put their lives on the line, and for the police officer to have to deal with that disrespect has got to be enormously frustrating. I don't know what emotion comes out of your husband when these Blue Lives Matter things are being forced to be started. I mean, this is unbelievable.
These last 4 years have been very difficult on the family, absolutely. Not only are we hearing it from the media, but we're seeing it on Facebook. And that's the number one thing that I hear from other wives, is that they are having to defriend even family members and close friends and people that they've known for years, because they are spewing hate towards police officers. And they're like, well, wait a minute. This is my husband you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
this is the guy you're going to call when stuff hits the fan tomorrow at your house. What happens tomorrow when he shows up at your house to get rid of the bad guy? Exactly.
And, I think our officers are trained to some degree to deal with that, because it's always been around, always. But I think now, because of social media, it's more, we hear it more, and we're getting it from more than just the streets. It's once they're off duty and they're out of uniform, usually they're good, right? But not these days. These days, you go home and it is in your face. You've got people showing up at your doorstep. If you are out in the news, you've got your address being put over social media, different things like that. We're seeing that right now here in Sacramento area. So it's rough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Well, I mean, as entrepreneurs, as people with businesses, you know, we need to keep our places of business safe. We need to respect the fact that you know, people are out there fighting overseas, but also right here in our neighborhoods to protect our way of life. And so I always think, we discuss this on the show, what can I do? I need to go all in on what I'm trying to do, which is building businesses and helping people build businesses, because there are people like your husband that are fighting so that we have the freedom to chase these entrepreneurial dreams.
Exactly. And, you know, that is the goal. Most officers, I would say probably 98%, go out or go into this line of business because they want to make a difference. They want to change lives. And they're human, and they make mistakes. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is when you come into contact with an officer, you're usually mad, you're bad, or you're sad of some sort. And so officers see the most negative piece of humanity. And that has its own difficulties in the emotional makeup of officers, because a lot of times they'll get jaded, or, you know, they're seeing the same thing over and over and over. And it's not necessarily a racist attitude. It's a just, I've seen this over and over and over again.
There's a coping mechanism that kicks in. Look, we're out of time. Vicki, I appreciate you coming on the show. If you want more Vicki Newman, come out to Taste for a Cause at Randy Peters Catering. It will be tonight, Saturday night, 6 o'clock. I think you got to buy the tickets online, so if you want the tickets, email me or something. But she'll be out there to share her story and the story and helping us raise money for our Action Track chairs for the military. Anyway, I want to thank you for coming on the show today, Vicki. And when we return, we're going to have something happen on the show that we've never done before. I'm actually going to interview Mark Haney about a few of his most brutal moments and where he found the strength to persevere. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, courtesy of the Entrepreneurs Organization of Sacramento and law firm Greenberg Traurig. This is the HaneyBiz Project.